Welcome everyone to Podcast 69 South, where we cuss and discuss true crime, cold cases, current events, and hot topics, along with our state of society today. This is your trigger warning. Our podcast content is produced for adult listeners 18 years of age and older. We discuss situations that may be offensive and triggering to some listeners. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Tonight, the Morgan County coroner has now released the final autopsy report for 1-year-old Oaklee Snow. The little girl's death tonight is classified as a homicide of unspecified means. Police discovered her body in a dresser drawer in an abandoned home in Morgan County last April. Now, Metro Police believe her mom's boyfriend actually killed her in a house on the south side of Indianapolis back in February.
Welcome back, everybody, to 69 South Podcast. I'm your host, Chop, and with me always is my beautiful co-host, Julie. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Today we're talking about a case that's been heavy on our hearts. Roan Waters, Madison Marshall, and the tragic death of little Oaklee Snow. We've been digging into this case since day one, and today we're asking a tough question. Could Oaklee still be alive if Waters didn't get such a light plea deal back in 2017? Let's set the stage. What was the deal, and what was he originally looking at?
So, let's go back to 2017. Rowan Waters got arrested on October 18th in Shelby County, Indiana, with a whole mess of charges. We've got the notes on an F2 burglary with a deadly weapon, an F5 burglary for recklessness, 2 F6 felonies, and 1 for using a deadly weapon, another for a use of body armor to commit a felony, plus misdemeanors for resisting law enforcement and criminal mischief.
That sounds like some home invasion shit. I mean, wearing a body armor into a burglary? Like dressed up like a bank robber or something and went in there.
Now, if they stacked all of those sentences consecutively, he was looking at a max sentence of 42.5 years. The F2 alone, that's 10 to 30 years with an advisory sentence of 17.5 years. The F5 is a 1 to 6 year sentence. The F6 are 6 months to 2.5 years. So even if some of the time ran together, like they often do, he was still facing 20 to 25 years. That's a long time behind bars.
Yeah, 20 to 25 years. That'd keep him locked up until at least 2037, maybe longer, but that's not what he got. What was the plea deal they got for him?
Not even close. By May 9th, 2018, he takes a plea deal, which drops the F2 felony to an F5 burglary charge, and everything else gets tossed. He gets 5 years with about 6.5 months he's already spent in jail waiting for sentencing, plus good time credit. He's out by February 16th of 2022. So he serves a little over 4 years total.
4 years. That's little to nothing compared to 20 or more. So let's talk about Oaklee. If he's locked up until 2037, I wonder if that would have changed her story.
It sure could have. If Waters is still in prison in 2022, he's not out in Oklahoma by November getting charged with child abuse and domestic battery for hurting Oakley and her mom, Madison Marshall. He's not on the run, and he's not with Madison when she takes off with Oakley and her brother on January 19, 2023. And most importantly, he's not in Indianapolis on February 9th, 2023, when Oakley is killed. If he'd still been locked up, Oakley might still be alive today, playing and laughing like she should be.
That's a hard pill to swallow. I mean, to think that that little girl might still be here if they hadn't let him out so early. What do you think of that plea deal? Do you think he got it because it was like maybe his first offense as an adult? I mean, that's Shelby County, too, not Marion County. Shelby County, I thought, was a little bit rougher on him. Yeah, I don't think
he had any previous, maybe some traffic tickets or something minimal, but nothing that was like the first big felony.
Maybe they were just giving him the benefit of the doubt, hoping he could learn his lesson, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
And he got off way too easy. Look, I get why plea deals happen. Prosecution wants a sure thing, and a trial is a gamble, but dropping an F2 burglary with a deadly weapon down to an F5, that's a huge jump. He went from facing decades to walking free in 4 years. And those other charges, the deadly weapon, the body armor, they just vanish. That ain't justice. Not when you look at what he did later.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, he had a deadly weapon. He was ready to do some damage. They let him off with a pat on the back. And now you look at where Oakley is gone, and he's facing murder charges. It makes you wonder if the system dropped the ball big time back in 2018.
It really does. And now with his trial coming up on June 9th, 2025, we're all waiting to see if he'll finally face the music for what happened to Oakley. But it's hard not to think about what could have been if that plea deal hadn't been so lenient.
I personally believe that a stronger sentence could have saved Oakley. Let's zero in on that moment that turned Rowan Waters into a fugitive. Julie, take us back to November 2022. What the heck happened in Oklahoma to kick all this shit off?
So by November 2022, Roan Waters is living out in Oklahoma with his woman, Madison Marshall. Things seemed quiet for a bit after he got out of prison, but then it all blows up when he gets charged with child abuse and domestic assault and battery in the presence of a minor.
So that's how he got the original warrant put on him after that?
Well, a bench warrant got issued because he didn't show up for court. Instead of facing the music, Waters bolted, left Oklahoma, and hightailed it back to Indiana on the run with that warrant hanging over his head.
Well, of course he's going to run. He's not wanting to face the music. Sounds like he knew he was in deep shit. Those charges, child abuse could have been 1 to 10 years, and the domestic battery adds another year if they stacked it. He probably wasn't sticking around for all that.
No, he wasn't. And here's the kicker. He was still in touch with Madison even after on the run. That connection didn't break, and it's going to lead to more trouble down the line. But the warrant, that's what kicked off him being a fugitive.
Yeah, that's the spark that lit the whole fire. He did not want to return to prison, and it led to Oaklee Snow's death. Let's jump into this probable cause affidavit and see what allegedly happened. So, this is the probable cause affidavit for Madison Marshall and her co-defendant, Rowan Waters. This affidavit for probable cause does not contain each and every material fact known to the detectives and or other law enforcement officials from the IMPD or the FBI. This affidavit contains the necessary facts and information just to establish the probable cause for the arrest of Madison Marshall and Rowan Waters for the disappearance and death of Oaklee Snow, white female, date of birth 3/10/2021.
On October 26, 2022, Madison Marshall contacted the Oaklee County Sheriff's Office in Oklahoma to report allegations of physical assault by her boyfriend, Rowan Waters. Madison alleged that Rowan had struck her 1.5-year-old daughter, Oaklee Snow, in the face during an altercation the day prior. Then Rowan hit Madison in the head when she attempted to intervene in the assault.
Deputies with the OCSO arrived at Madison's shared residence with Rowan in Cromwell, Oklahoma, and attempted to make contact with the occupants. Rowan answered the front door and asked the deputies if they had a warrant to be on his property. Before they could answer, he slammed the door in their faces.
The deputies attempted to explain through the closed door the purpose of their presence, that they were there for a welfare check. But Rowan yelled for them to get the fuck out as the deputies returned to their marked police vehicles. A blue colored SUV pulled up next to them. They identified multiple occupants inside of it, to include Madison, Oakley, and Madison's 3-month-old son, CS.
Rowan appeared to see Madison's interaction with the officers and exited from the residence. He immediately began yelling so that the deputies could no longer hear what the occupants of the SUV were saying. Rowan also began playing loud music to further inhibit their conversation. The deputies eventually left the property after Marshall attempted to assure them that she and her children were not in danger.
Talk about a loose cannon.
Yeah, and later that day, Zach Snow contacted the sheriff's department to inform them that Madison would now like to make a formal report to them. Zach Snow identified himself as the biological father of Oakley and CS. Deputies arrived at Zach's father's residence in Cromwell and spoke with Madison. She was present with her 2 children. Madison stated that Rowan had struck Oakley in the mouth with an open hand on October 25, 2022, because she had been crying.
Madison lifted Oakley's upper lip so that the deputies could see the cut on the other side. She explained that Rowan hit Oakley and she confronted him. He then slapped Madison across the left side of her face. The impact left a contusion over her left eye and cheek, which were visible to the deputies. They photographed Madison and Oakley's injuries and documented the report in order to present the case to the county prosecutor's office for possible charges.
Madison requested that only charges be filed against Rowan for his abuse against Oakley rather than on her. On November 7, 2022, the District Court of Oaklee County filed a warrant for Rowan's arrest for the charges of child abuse and domestic assault and battery in the presence of a minor. Under the docket number CF-2022-0057 as it related to the above events.
On January 19, 2023, Zach Snow reported the disappearance of Oakley and CS from his home of his residence in Cromwell, Oklahoma. He reported it to the Seminole County Sheriff's Office that Madison and Roan took his children from his home without authorization and had likely fled to Indianapolis to be with Rowan's family.
So let's back this up a little bit here. They were living in Oklahoma, and it seems like Madison and Zach were a couple. They had went to school together and stuff, and they had 2 children together.
Yeah, she had just had a baby 3 months prior to this event.
So Rowan goes to prison, and he gets out in Indiana, and at some point he returns back to Oklahoma.
Yes.
And kind of infiltrates their little, happy family life, supposedly.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And then after this incident, she goes back to Zach and is living there as a couple, I guess. And then on January 19th, she just cut out in the middle of the night with the 2 children.
In all reports that we looked at, this Zach Snow seemed like he was giving her a pretty good life. Like they had a nice place to live. He had a job, and he was taking care of the family.
Yeah, I don't think that I just think she was a stay-at-home mom, and he did all the work and he provided the home. I mean, they had a pretty good life.
So on March 3rd, 2023, the Greenwood Village, Colorado Police Department located and arrested Rowan for his outstanding warrant in Oklahoma after responding to a complaint regarding occupants of a room at a local Best Western hotel located at 9231 East Arapahoe Road in Greenwood Village, Colorado. Through their follow-up investigation at the scene of the arrest, they determined that Marshall had been staying with him at the hotel but had no reason to be detained at that time.
Additionally, there were no signs that children had been with them. Law enforcement identified Roan's cellular phone number ending in 2033. However, no cell phone was present on Rowan upon his arrest. Deputies from the OCSO learned of Rowan Waters' arrest that day and requested assistance from the GWVPD with interviewing him about the disappearance of the children.
Detectives interviewed Rowan on that same day. He stated that he had traveled from Oklahoma with Madison and her 2 children in his blue-colored Dodge Durango, bearing an Indianapolis license plate. They stayed at a trap house within the city of Indianapolis so that he and Marshall could use drugs. He further stated that Madison had made the decision to abandon her son at the trap house before leaving to go to Colorado. So how long was this after he got the warrant in Oklahoma?
So he got the warrant in November of 2022. And this is 4 months after that. But Zach Snow had reported his children missing on January 19th. And this is about a month and a half after that. So they've been on the run since Oakley's was killed on February 9th. So they're on the run a little under a month. And they went to Colorado.
And they're living in a trap house in between these times. I mean, he's abusing, physically abusing her and her children, or her daughter, supposedly, allegedly, in Oklahoma. They go supposedly living in a trap house in Indianapolis, and then basically they're on the run again, and they can't even keep it together long enough to not get phone calls from the people at the damn Best Western that they're screaming and yelling and fighting probably.
Oh, I bet it was a chaotic mess.
It sounds like it. Now, in the days that followed, detectives at the Arapahoe County, Colorado Sheriff's Office, investigators were reviewing Rowan's jail calls made within the Arapahoe County Detention Center while he was pending extradition back to Oklahoma. Rowan frequently talked to his mother, identified as Brandy Pearson, also known as Rowan Waters, who is a current resident of Indianapolis, Indiana. During these calls, he informed Brandy that he had lied to the police and had indeed been present when the children were each abandoned. He admitted to assisting Madison with specifically dropping Oakley off somewhere. However, he did not provide specific details. Brandy informed him that Madison had his 2033 cell phone now.
Roan also spoke to Madison from the phone number ending in 2033. 2033. She told him that she planned to change her name, though she never told him what her new alias would be. She explained that she had since made contact with his mother, Brandy, following his arrest, and asked her what she should do now. They agreed to have Rowan's older brother, BW, and his wife, DW, travel to Colorado to take her back to Indianapolis. Madison explained that Brandy was coordinating these plans with DW and BW on her behalf. There was no discussion as to the whereabouts of Oakley or her son.
I bet the cops were listening to them jail calls and wonder why is she going to change her name and go on the run and shit? You know what I mean? At this point, they really didn't know what had happened to the babies. So on March 6, 2023, detectives believed Oakley and CS to be in extreme danger. Detective Tangleman requested FBI Indianapolis assistance with locating them. Detectives in turn contacted Marion County DCS office and confirmed that Rowan's sister, we'll call her KW, had reported the abandonment and recovery of CS. That's Madison's 3-month-old, on February 9th, 2023, at approximately 7:41 p.m. that night. She had informed the caseworkers that her brother, Rowan, and Madison needed to take 2-year-old Oakley to the hospital. His sister was unaware if and when they would return. DCS informed the special agent that Zach, the father of the children, had taken back custody of CS earlier that afternoon, and they had likely returned to Oklahoma.
We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Chop here at 69 South. We have gathered quite the following of new and faithful listeners. In fact, we're in 72 countries and 1,600 cities. It excites the shit out of us, to be honest. We have countless downloads and streams. If you're a small business starting out or an accomplished business looking for some good advertisement, shoot us an email at 69southpodcast@gmail.com. The 6 and the 9 are numbers, southpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Have a good day. We will send you a advertisement package.
Now, the detectives notified the federal detectives notified the local detectives of the above investigation and requested assistance from the IMPD Missing Persons Unit with locating Oakley and Madison. Detectives then traveled to Brandy's place of employment to obtain a statement as to her knowledge of their whereabouts. Brandy stated that Roan had arrived in Indianapolis back in early February or late January of 2023. He had traveled in his blue-colored Dodge Durango with his girlfriend Madison and her 2 small children.
Now, Brandy said she had only seen them once. However, she had allowed them to stay at one of her residential properties located at 305 Albany Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. Brandy had bought baby formula and supplies to assist them with caring for the kids during their stay, since they had arrived with nothing for the children. She knew Rowan and Madison to actively use drugs, including during their recent visit to Indiana.
Brandy recalled Roan's friend named Tennessee calling her on or about February 9, 2023, to say that Rowan and Madison had left him alone with CS, the 3-month-old baby. Now, he requested that she immediately come to 305 Albany Street to take custody of him. Brandy agreed and rushed to the house. Upon her arrival, she observed Tennessee standing outside the front of the house holding the baby. The baby had no clothes on. Brandy then contacted Rowan's sister, KW, to come to the house to help take care of the baby. This was because Brandy needed to return to work that day. KW agreed and arrived shortly thereafter.
Brandy was aware of Rowan's arrest in Colorado and had spoken to him multiple times over jail calls since then. She stated that she had agreed to help Marshall return to Indiana because she did not think that Marshall, quote, had anybody else. Therefore, she sent her eldest son, Rowan's brother, BW, to Colorado to pick her up, and also to recover Rowan's Dodge Durango. She reported that BW had successfully returned with both Madison and the vehicle to Indianapolis in the days that followed.
Brandy identified her cell phone number ending in 2483 and informed the detectives that it was her understanding that Madison now had custody of Roan's cell phone ending in 2033, and she believed that Marshall had taken it prior to Roan getting arrested in Colorado earlier that month.
Next, the detectives interviewed Rowan's sister. She also had stated that February 9, 2023, that Brandy had called her to ask to come and help at the Albany Street address to help take care of the baby. She agreed and she rushed over there to help. She also then called Rowan by cell phone to ask why he and Madison had left the baby alone. He explained that Oakley had been bouncing on a bouncy ball that day and had fallen. He claimed that as a result of her injury, he and Madison needed to take her to the emergency room. Given the above circumstances, she feared for the baby's well-being at the Albany Street residence and asked her husband to come with her so she could temporarily take care of the baby at her own house. Approximately 15 minutes later, her husband arrived. Rowan and Madison got back to the Albany Street residence about the same time. KW neither saw Oakley nor did she attempt to speak with Rowan or Madison before departing with the baby. She explained to the FBI agent and the local police that she did not believe that Rowan and Madison could have driven Oakley to the nearest hospital and then returned back to the house in that short amount of time.
Wow. So
what she's saying is basically they were gone. They left the baby there with the dude named Tennessee, which we don't know anything about him. He probably could have been a good dude. Obviously, he was calling somebody, hey, you guys need to come take care of this baby.
Yeah, and you could tell she was pissed when they pulled up because she just cut out with the baby.
Didn't even say shit to him.
No.
And in the back of her mind, she's thinking something's fucked up because she's probably been to emergency rooms with kids and shit. I mean, you take a little baby to the emergency room, it's not a 15-minute, 30-minute ordeal. So she was already skeptical of their bullshit at this point already.
And thank God she took that baby with her and contacted DCS that night and asked them to take custody of the baby. She further informed them of the possible circumstances of Oakley being taken to the hospital for a head injury earlier that day. KW informed the detectives that she had previously provided the same information to detectives with the SCSO. KW further stated that on the night of March 3rd, 2023, Madison arrived at her residence asking if she could stay there. KW told her that she could stay only if she told her where Oakley was. Madison refused and left her property on foot. KW had not seen or spoken to Madison since that time. However, she recalled visiting Rowan and Madison at 305 Albany Street back in late January when they had first arrived in Indianapolis. She observed both Oakley and the baby to be present at their house that day. She additionally observed Madison assisting Oakley, helping her use the bathroom at one point. KW saw bruising along Oakley's legs. She immediately confronted both of them as to the source of Oakley's visible injuries. Roan and Madison both became extremely defensive and ordered her to leave the house.
Now, his sister, man, she must be somewhat of a decent person. She's basically a stranger to these kids, you know what I mean? And just to have the heart to be reaching out and looking out for these babies at this time. I mean, she was even like, yeah, you can stay here, but you got to tell me where your little girl is. Like, tell me where she's at, or you can't stay here, and send her ass packing. Good for her. Hell yeah, good for her. I guess since Oakley's disappearance, the sister had made efforts to find out what happened to her. She stated that she had visited multiple nearby hospitals, all of which were unable to confirm if Oakley was ever a patient. She also spoke with the neighbors of the Albany Street address about any information that may have led to about the day that Oakley was last seen. One unidentified nearby resident stated that he had last observed Waters and Madison leaving the house with what looked like a child wrapped in a blanket. He stated that the child did not appear to be moving, talking, or crying.
Rowan's sister, KW, informed detectives that Roan and Madison had told her that they had voluntarily chosen to give up Oakley in Indianapolis. She quoted them as collectively saying, "We handled it," and that they had a hard decision to make. They were unwilling to provide any further details as to how they had given her up or where she was now. KW believed that they had likely harmed Oakley and that she was in extreme danger.
Detectives identified Community South Hospital, Indianapolis, Indiana, and Riley Hospital for Children as the most likely places that Rowan and Madison could have taken Oakley if she were suffering from a severe physical injury. It was verified through the security offices of both hospitals that Oakley was never a patient there and that they had not located a 2-year-old white abandoned female there in 2023.
Rowan's sister identified Rowan's close friend and roommate at the Albany Street address as a black male known as Tennessee. She stated that Tennessee was present at the house the day that everything happened. On March 7, 2023, detectives interviewed Tennessee after locating him at the Albany Street address. He stated that he had been friends with Roan and Madison and recalled when he intermittently resided at the residence back in late January of 2023. Tennessee stated that Roan and Madison were drug users. They typically snorted heroin, which would cause them to be non-functioning for prolonged periods of time. He further described Roan and Madison's care towards the children as relatively inattentive. They rarely fed or held them and instead would place them in front of the TV for the majority of the day. He never saw them provide the children with any love or affection. However, Tennessee did observe bruising on Oakley's leg prior to her disappearance.
Tennessee also remembered seeing Oakley earlier in the day on February 9th. She walked up to him when he first entered the Albany Street residence that morning, and she allowed him to pick her up. However, he noticed she was wearing makeup around her eyes and mouth. He had never seen her wear makeup before, and it appeared that it had been applied by an adult. He also noticed a line going from her bottom lip to her chin that resembled a bruise. He then left the house and did not return until later that day. This was the last time he saw Oakley. Later that day, he observed Rowan briefly arrive at Brandy's nearby place of employment. Tennessee was also visiting there at that time. Rowan seemed in a rush and seemed somewhat frantic. He left after briefly conversating with his mother.
Tennessee then went to visit with B. Waters, Rowan's brother, who he was also close friends with. He remembered B. Waters receiving a call from Brandy later that afternoon in which she was extremely upset. B. Waters responded by saying, "I don't know what the fuck Rowan has going on, but you all need to deal with it." B. Waters then hung up the phone. Tennessee stated that he would not tell him what the call was about that day and had since become much more distant towards him.
Later that night, Tennessee returned to Albany Street. He witnessed both Rowan and Madison there without either of their children. Both of them seemed high on drugs to the point of being incapacitated. And it seemed like they was just getting fucked up. And you can't have two heroin addicts snorting heroin and nodding off constantly trying to take care of a 3-month-old and a
1-year-old.
A 1-year-old.
No, that don't happen. On March 18th, 2023, Zach recontacted the detectives. He informed them that he had identified an additional Facebook account that he believed Madison was now actively using. He was Facebook friends with a BT who was previously identified Facebook account. Because of this, he was able to view additional content within BT's profile, to include the post made to her timeline in recent days. Zach provided details with screenshots that he had taken on his phone of BT's Facebook timeline. The screenshot showed a post on March 4th, 2023 from a Facebook account maintaining the username Bunny Cooper.
The post specifically said and stated, "Text me ASAP" with a smiley face with hearts. Zach stated that he was confident that the Facebook account belonged to Madison. He explained that Bunny was a nickname that her friend used for Madison. Furthermore, Cooper was her father's last name and her former maiden name. I bet this dude was just flipping out, man. His babies are missing. He's off with this dude. It's smacking him all the time. The poor dude was going nuts, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. And it looks like, Miss Madison Marshall was married and divorced. You see that?
Yeah.
Because her maiden name is Cooper. But anyway.
He was avidly playing detective, man, going through, Facebook friends that she could have had, used to have, and everything. He even knew
he was
nicknames.
Searching everything.
He was.
On March 23rd, 2023, members of the FBI Charlotte Field Office located Madison at her friend's confirmed residence in Bun Level, North Carolina. Upon her arrest, task force officers and the FBI presented Marshall with her Miranda rights. She understood her rights and voluntarily waived them by signing an advice of rights form. Madison ultimately told the task force officer that Roan had killed Oakley at approximately 1:30 p.m. on February 9th, 2023.
Boom, she spilled the beans instantly, because at this point they were just looking to where they had abandoned the kids at. I mean, they really didn't have any idea if they had sold them or they had been kidnapped or they had dropped them off somewhere. They had no clue. And then, boom, they get her, and she immediately says Rowan killed her.
Instantly.
In her first interview, Madison had been in the kitchen of the Albany Street, Indianapolis residence when Rowan entered holding Oakley. Oakley was no longer wearing clothes and was not responsive. Rowan initially tried to put her in the bathtub to immerse her in cold water in the hopes of reviving her. When that failed, he wrapped Oakley in a pink and black colored blanket that had hearts on it and had put her in a rear passenger seat of his Dodge Durango.
Now, before departing, he informed Madison that he intended to take Oakley to the hospital. She stated that she tried to call 911 as Oakley appeared to be dying, but Rowan struck her hand hard enough to knock the phone out of her hands. He then disconnected the call. Madison stated that Rowan returned approximately an hour and a half later. He had only had the blanket that Oakley had previously been wrapped in, and he stated that he left her body in the naked woods. Now, remember, this is her first interview.
Right, and knowing what we know now, she was only telling about half the truth.
Right.
Rowan informed her that he had taken Oakley to his grandparents' property in Martinsville, Indiana. He further explained that he had laid Oakley's body in the woods somewhere on their property. Madison stated that it could have been in an abandoned house either on or near the area based on her recollection of Rowan's explanation that day and the days that followed. She said that she was unfamiliar with his family outside of his mother and siblings. She claimed that she had neither met his grandparents nor had she ever been to the Martinsville address he spoke of.
The FBI and IMPD determined that day that Rowan did indeed have family that currently resided in Martinsville, Indiana.
They identified the property owners as Rowan Waters' grandparents from Martinsville, Indiana. The detectives traveled to the location on Redbud Lane that night and made contact with the grandparents. They confirmed that the Redbud Lane was their residential home address. The residence of Sedgwick Road was located just north of their home within the same property boundaries and had previously inhabited by Rowan's great-grandparents before they had died decades earlier, then explained how they now owned both properties.
The grandfather stated that he was Rowan's step-grandfather. When Rowan and his siblings were children, they had come to their home many times on Redbud Lane and played in the woods around their property. They had not seen Rowan in several years, though. They did not recall seeing or hearing from him in February of 2023, nor did they ever observe a Dodge Durango on their property in February or any time thereafter. However, they explained that their property between Redbud and Sedgwick was over 20 acres and heavily wooded. They said it was possible he could have came down there to either of the properties during that time without their knowledge, and they had never seen Oakley and were unaware of her disappearance.
Oh, that's highly possible. I've been out in that area, man, and it is heavily wooded. It's beautiful out there, actually. Rowan's grandparents also provided verbal consent for the investigators to search their properties of Redbud Lane and Sedgwick Road. Detectives and the assisting police officers and deputies from the Morgan County, Indiana sheriffs were unable to locate Oakley that night.
On April 4th, 2023, detective spoke with Rowan's sister, KW. He asked her if she had any family residing in Martinsville, Indiana. She immediately named her grandparents and their residence on Redbud Lane. She stated that Rowan was very familiar with their property due to how often they would play there as children. She and Rowan had various locations within the wooded area that they liked to go, including hollowed out trees, deer stands, sheds, and other enclosures on the property.
On April 5th, 2023, the MCSC authorized warrants to seize and search the cellular telephone from Tennessee, as well as the cellular phone that belonged to Brandy. The MCSC also issued a warrant for investigators to search the Albany Street, Indianapolis address for the pink and black colored blanket that Oakley's body had been wrapped up in.
On April 6, 2023, detectives executed the search warrant at the Albany Street residence to recover the pink and black blanket. Tennessee was present at the house during its execution and recalled seeing a blanket that matched its description when Rowan had lived there with Madison and her kids. However, investigators were unable to find it that day.
On April 5th, 2023, Tennessee was re-interviewed, and this time he provided additional details about the events that transpired on February 9th. He admitted to receiving a phone call from Madison that afternoon saying that Oakley had been hurt and that he needed to return to the Albany Street address. He remembered her voice being matter-of-fact, saying that he needed to bring the Durango back home for them. Upon his arrival home, he did not see Oakley. However, Rowan told him multiple times that he fucked up. He recalled taking custody of the baby while both of them left the house for several hours. They returned alone, and Tennessee was still unaware of Oakley's whereabouts. At the conclusion of the interview, detectives seized his phone.
As Tennessee was providing the above statement, Brandy Pearson, Rowan's mother, was being re-interviewed. She ultimately provided clearer details about the series of events that transpired on February 9, 2023. She stated that Rowan had called her in the mid-afternoon of February 9th. He seemed panicked and told her that he had to take Oakley to the emergency room because she had fallen off a bouncy ball and hit her head. He did not ask her for anything at that time and seemed to only want to notify her of the situation. Brandy could tell that he was inside of a vehicle when he made the call because she could hear his voice echo as if He was currently sitting in a small enclosed place. She could also hear a female speaking to him in the background. She strongly believed that this female was Madison and that she was in the vehicle with him. She could not recall if the female's voice also sounded panicked. Brandy recalled that Tennessee told her that he was home alone watching the baby. Brandy then picked the baby up. She brought the baby to her place of employment while she waited for Rowan's sister, KW, to arrive to take custody of him hours later. Rowan called his mother back. He stated that Madison had made the decision to abandon Oakley at the hospital. He provided no further details and became agitated when she tried to question him further on this. Detectives asked Brandy if she had any prior knowledge of the circumstances of Oakley's disappearance that she had not previously disclosed to IMPD or the FBI. They showed her the records from her 2483 cell phone to emphasize that recurring and frequent contacts she had with Rowan that day surrounding the likely time that Oakley was harmed.
We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, this is Chop from 69 South, man. While we're taking a little break, get up, get yourself something to drink, grab yourself a plate of food. But hey, look up shopcenterdjewels.com, man. Pick up one of our badass 69 South t-shirts. A portion of the proceeds goes to victims, and it helps support our show. Help keep the lights on here in the studio. We thank you all so much for listening. Everybody just take it easy and enjoy life. That's what it's all about. You notice something funny about these interviews? You can just tell. It keeps saying, it says re-interviewed. And the first interview, it seems like they were letting out a little bit of information here, just enough to pacify that we don't know shit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then when they're re-interviewed, a little bit of more shit comes out.
They just making themselves look guilty, because if I was in a room for something that serious, I'd spill everything I knew. Now, Brandy denied knowing any further details, but believed it was possible that Roan could have harmed Oakley. Detectives next asked Brandy if she had members of her family secure the whereabouts of Madison and return her to Indianapolis following Roan's arrest in Colorado, because she feared that Madison would report to the police what had actually happened to Oakley. Detectives asked if Madison had confided to her information regarding her son's culpability in Oakley's demise, which was why Madison was suddenly taken to the Greyhound bus station to ensure that she left the state.
What do you think about that shit? The cops were already on to it. Yeah. So, I mean,
she wanted her out of this state so nobody could find her. So that's why she put her on the Greyhound bus. Right. Rowan was locked up in Colorado, and she was trying to get rid of her.
See, when people start getting locked up, other people start talking. You notice that?
Yeah.
Quickly. Now, Brandy did admit buying a cell phone for Madison before she left, but denied paying for the ticket. She again denied any further knowledge as to what happened to Oakley or where she was now. Detectives then asked Brandy if she would be willing to take a polygraph test as to the truthfulness of her statement that day. She initially agreed and was introduced to the FBI Indianapolis certified polygrapher by the special agent. Brandy then requested to consult with her attorney by way of cell phone call.
I bet she did.
Hey, yeah, I'll take it. Oh, here's the FBI. Let me talk to my attorney real quick before I do this. After a private consultation, Brandy informed the detectives that she now declined to submit to the test. They then served her with the warrant to seize her 2483 cell phone.
Oh, she had no intentions on ever taking that polygraph. She was hoping, I'll just say yeah, and they'll schedule me for another day. They didn't know they was going to hit her with, well, here he is.
Yeah, they called her bluff right from the gate. It's like one of them interviews you see. Would you be willing to take a polygraph test? Well, yes, I would. Damn it, I didn't think he said he would.
So detectives were provided with the details of Madison's second statement. Detectives and members of the IMPD and FBI immediately searched many various areas of Martinsville, Indiana, in the days and weeks that followed. This was all done without initial success of locating Oakley. These efforts included coordination with local law enforcement agencies, a multitude of interviews of local residents living in the area and surrounding Redbud Lane.
On April 20th, 2023, officers extradited Madison back to Indianapolis, Indiana for charges of neglect.
On April 21st, 2023, detectives and special agents took temporary custody of Madison for the purposes of re-interviewing her about her knowledge and involvement in Oakley's disappearance.
Here's where the truth really starts coming out.
Madison was presented with an advice of rights forms. She stated she understood her rights and voluntarily waived them by signing the form. They next drove her to Albany Street. Marshall immediately recognized the residence as the house she had stayed in with Roan and Tennessee and her children during portions of January and February of 2023. She also mentioned that Rowan's brother had occasionally stayed at the residence as well. She explained that there was a TV just to the right of the front door, which hung over the two front windows of the house. If you turned left from the front door, you entered the dining room, which connected to a small living room. The first floor bedroom opened to this living room. The living room was also connected to a small hallway that led to a full bathroom, kitchen, access to a stairway to the second floor, and then access to the basement. Rowan and Madison had shared the first floor bedroom, while Oakley had slept on a cot in the living room, and the baby slept in a pack-and-play that was kept in the same room. Marshall then once again provided a statement as to the events that transpired on February 9th, 2023.
She recalled the ongoing physical abuse that Oakley had endured at the hands of Rowan in the months leading up to her death. He would frequently whoop or spank her as a form of discipline. He had also occasionally choked her out. Jeez, man, a 2-year-old? How in the fuck do you choke a 2-year-old out?
I don't know.
I mean, in all reality, Madison should have got her fucking shit and her kids and left right then. I mean, you see your little 2-year-old getting choked out.
She should have never even went back to him after he busted her lip back in October of the previous year.
Yeah, you open hand smack. I don't know if Oakley was at 2 at this point in time.
No, she was just like a 1.5.
You know, open hand smack a baby that age enough to bust the inside of her lip.
He needs his ass
I mean, that's strike one, and then you smack the shit out of her and choke her out. I mean, it just kind of goes to show what holds drugs and, fake reality can do for you, I guess. Anyway, that's the excuses that he gave to this type of discipline included her crying and urinating in her diaper. Oh, and holding a fork the wrong way. And, common behavior of a toddler. The abuse was so bad that Oakley stopped eating around Rowan. This was because he regularly became aggressive with her when she would not eat, the pace that he wanted her to eat to. Madison attempted time and time again to explain to him that she was only 2 years old and she did not understand what he was wanting her to do. However, his physical abuse toward Oakley would often get redirected towards Madison if she would attempt to interfere with it. She remembered having separate occasions and conversations with Rowan's brother and sister about the abuse. She specifically asked Rowan's brother to talk to him on about February 8th, 2023. The day before Oakley is murdered, Rowan's brother came to the house at Albany Street and argued with Rowan Waters in front of the house on the lawn. But his brother shortly left after that without finding a resolution to it.
On the morning of February 9th, 2023, Madison and Rowan woke up to Oakley crying because she was hungry. Rowan threw Oakley onto the floor in response to this due to her crying had agitated him. Her head's impact with the floor had caused Oakley to have a red bump above her right eye. Madison applied some of her own makeup to Oakley's face to try to hide the bruise. Tennessee came downstairs at some point that day and socialized with them. Madison prepared some ramen noodles for Oakley as a snack because she was hungry. Madison then started preparing lunch for everyone. Tennessee said that he was going to the gas station to get some Swisher cigars. Oakley initially tried to follow him out of the house, but he stopped her and told her that he would be right back. Oakley next entered the kitchen and said, "Mama, eat." Madison told her that she was making them all food and to wait in the other room. Oakley then walked into the living room where Roan was watching TV while the baby laid on the floor in front of him.
Shortly thereafter, Madison began hearing Rowan yell at Oakley. He was specifically ordering her to bounce on the bouncy ball. Madison described the ball as being made of rubber and inflatable. It maintained a handle on top of it, which allowed kids to lightly bounce up and down as they sat on it. Madison further stated Oakley had likely been too small to sit on it by herself. She recalled hearing Rowan's voice continually get louder and angry as he told her to bounce. Madison yelled back at him multiple times to calm down and that Oakley probably didn't understand what he was wanting her to do. After the fifth and loudest time that he yelled at her, Madison stopped what she was doing in the kitchen and walked into the living room. She observed Rowan standing over Oakley as she sat trying to bounce on the ball. Rowan told Madison to quit coming in there and sat back down on the couch. Madison took his retreat as the matter being resolved, so she went back to the kitchen to prepare their meal.
Madison did not recall hearing anything else from the living room until approximately 10 minutes later. At that time, Rowan screamed for her twice. She had never heard Rowan sound like that before. She immediately ran towards the living room. She met him in the hallway as he held Oakley in his arms. She saw that Oakley was not moving. Rowan began saying that he didn't do anything and it wasn't his fault. He initially refused to let Madison take Oakley from him and stripped off her clothes. Madison could see Oakley's stomach and chest cavity extend as if she was trying to breathe air. However, she observed what appeared to be a mix of blood and spit dripping from her mouth when she tried to exhale, which created a gurgling sound. Oakley's eyes remained closed throughout this time. Rowan placed her in a nearby bathtub and attempted to douse her in cold water to wake her up. When that failed, he brought Oakley into their bedroom and handed her to Madison.
Rowan seen Madison attempting to call 911 and slapped the phone from her hands. He then took control of the cell phone. Madison could tell Oakley was dying, and at some point Rowan returned the phone to her and she called Tennessee to tell him that something had happened to Oakley and that he needed to come home. When he entered minutes later, he stated, "I knew I shouldn't have left." Madison explained to this that he knew he shouldn't have left Rowan alone with Oakley. This was because he had likely heard and been aware of the physical abuse that Rowan had continually inflicted on her since moving to the Albany Street address.
Rowan next wrapped Oakley in a blanket that his mother, Brandy, had recently purchased. Madison described the blanket as being pink and black with flowers on it. She also added that it was a Victoria's Secret brand blanket. Rowan placed Oakley in the back seat of the Durango so that her feet were facing the driver's side and her head was towards the passenger side. He entered the driver's seat and Madison entered the rear passenger seat to be with Oakley. She held Oakley in her lap and occasionally opened the blanket to examine her. By this time, Oakley had stopped trying to breathe and her lips had become blue. Madison felt her skin, which now seemed to be cool to the touch. She could no longer feel a heartbeat as she held her. Madison pulled Oakley's eyelids back to further examine her, but saw no movement or response in them. She held Oakley's hand before eventually climbing up in the front seat next to Rowan.
I mean, what is your hit the stop button on this whole fucking fantasy reality point in this? You know what I mean? it should have been when he was choking her out or all the beatings and shit the first couple of times.
The first time,
Yeah.
their 1-year-old little baby.
I mean, he's bringing you the baby, and the poor little baby is gurgling. And obviously, I mean, you literally say to the police that you could tell that your baby was dying. You let this dude smack the phone out of your hand? I mean, come on.
She could have took that baby and ran out that house, ran down the road next door. There's a gas station on every corner in Indianapolis. You know, she could have got somewhere to call for help for her child.
I mean, honestly, at this very point in time, she could have stopped all this, not been in any trouble, you know? And, I mean, maybe a little bit of neglect for even being with the dude, I would say at this point. But
And letting him beat on her kids.
she could have hit the freaking out button at this point any time and probably saved this little girl's life. That's horrible.
Now, Roan drove them away from the Albany Street towards what seemed like another town. She remembered seeing a sign that said Martinsville. Now, remember, she is telling detectives this story as they're en route to look for Oakley's body. As the detective drove past the Reuben Drive and Hospital Road exit on 69 South, Madison observed a large concrete pillar that had the word Martinsville over it. She stated that this was likely the Martinsville sign that she had first reported seeing during her drive with Roan to dispose of Oakley on February 9th.
The police drove Madison past the property of Redbud Lane. Madison said the road seemed somewhat familiar, but could not positively identify Rowan's grandfather's house that Rowan had attempted to show her in February. They too drive southbound on Redbud Lane until they come to a T intersection at Railroad Road. Madison became excited and stated she confidently remembered this intersection. She told the detectives to turn eastbound on Railroad Road and then south towards the extensive tree line. Following this, Madison did not seem to recognize any of the terrain features, residents, or roads that we traveled past. She continued to provide details about the abandoned house where Oakley was left as they drove. They eventually turned up South Bear Waller Road, located in Morgantown, Indiana. Morgantown was directly south of Martinsville and only about 15 minutes from Redbud Lane when searched on Google Maps. Detectives directed Madison's attention to the run-down wooden house that sat at the top of a steep hill near a gravel road. The gravel road led to two nearby residences. Madison immediately stated, "Oh my God, that's it." She repeated this several times and added that she was 100% confident that this was the location that they had left Oakley. She was hysterically sobbing at this time. I bet it was kind of, you know...
Mm-hmm. She's sober by this point.
Yeah.
She's been in jail for a minute. She's sober by this point. You know, I bet it's all hitting her.
Right then, the emotional state that she had to be in. I mean, from seeing the sign in Martinsville, and then it's all slowly coming back to her. And like you said, she's sober. Her emotions are not numbed. Her feelings are not numbed. And this is what she's going through. And it must have been a whirlwind.
Detectives requested the assistance of IMPD Missing Persons Lieutenant King, who had been following in his car during the drive that day, to remain with Madison while we went to look at the property. Detectives climbed the hill and noticed that no Ford Mustang or any other vehicle was parked in front of it. However, they noticed ruts along the nearby paved road at the bottom of the hill that showed that something heavy had been towed or dragged away from the premises at some point. On a further note, the abandoned house had been predominantly made of wood. Though not much of its exterior or interior remained, it appeared to have been a one-story single-family home with an attached garage. They circled the exterior while the special agent entered through an opening in the wall. The interior was extensively cluttered with trash and debris and was difficult to walk through. The special agent strongly smelled a sour odor coming from deeper in the partially exposed living room. Detectives neared the kitchen, which shared a wall with the living room, and also smelled the odor. They immediately knew it to be the smell of a decomposing body through their training and experience. They strongly felt the odor was coming from a wooden dresser leaning against the living room wall near the kitchen. Both parties departed from the structure and obtained a warrant from the MCSC to search it for the remains of Oakley.
At that point, they were like, we found her. You know they were. Now, the Indiana State Police and crime scene investigator arrived within an hour of the warrant, with the warrant being granted, and initiated the taking of photographs of the property. Detectives informed them of the nature of the investigation and likelihood that Oakley was in the dresser. CSI Russell confirmed upon his further examination of the interior of the residence that the decomposing remains of a small child were in the bottom drawer of the identified dresser. Morgan County coroner arrived at the scene following this and led to the recovery of the child's remains. Given the state of the dresser, the upper portion had to be physically removed to not disturb the fragile remains in the bottom shelf. Upon removing the upper portion, they could clearly see the decomposing body of what appeared to be an adolescent female. A thin board had either fallen or been placed over the body, which partially protected her right arm from further the same level of decomposition of the rest of her. However, the blonde hair had remained attached to her skull and had been left in a loose ponytail by a black-colored hair tie. Additionally, her left leg was clearly broken at the knee, so that the left foot rested directly over her chest. A blue and white colored sock was still worn on this foot. Given the state of the remains, the coroner advised that the body should be transported intact with the dresser drawer still underneath it. They also requested to have the Indiana State Police Lab conduct testing on the drawer for any remaining touch DNA and or fingerprints. Gosh, that was hard to read.
That's horrible. So
Sure.
Not only did he beat her and kill her when he got her poor body to the old abandoned house, he just shoved her in the dresser and broke her legs. Her leg.
Yeah, snapped it, and her poor little baby foot with the little colored sock laid on her chest. I mean, you know, we read these stories, listeners out there, and I'm sure you guys listening, you get a picture of this shit in your head, and that right there is just heart-wrenching.
Now, regarding Rowan's family, Madison reiterated that she did indeed tell Rowan's mother, Brandy, that her son had killed her child. Brandy was told this after she was brought back to Indianapolis by Rowan's brother, B.W., and his girlfriend, D.W. Brandy responded by defensively telling Madison that Rowan had just gotten out of prison and that she was not going to allow Madison to put him back in it. Brandy then informed Madison that she would buy her a bus ticket to wherever she wanted to go with the expectation that she would not return to Indiana. Brandy also provided Madison with a cell phone and $200 in cash. Madison agreed and accepted the payment before departing to North Carolina.
Well, she was cheap to buy, wasn't she? $200 and a bus ticket.
Mm-hmm.
On April 24th, 2023, detectives attended the autopsy of the recovered adolescent female, which was conducted at the Morgan County Coroner's Office. At the conclusion of the autopsy, CSI Russell collected the drawer as evidence, packed and sealed it in a cardboard box, and secured it in the locked and secured area of the coroner's office. On April 25th, detectives returned to the Morgan County Coroner's Office and retrieved the drawer and transported it to ISP Crime Lab in Indianapolis for further testing and examination.
So, it's been 2 years since Oaklee Snow's body was found in that dresser drawer, and the fight for justice hasn't let up. Madison Marshall and Roan Waters are still behind bars waiting for their day in court. Madison's original charges were second-degree murder, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice for her role in Oakley's death and the cover-up. What exactly is Rowan facing?
Rowan got a heavier load, as he should have, I think. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed up on that. Maybe
they both should have been even.
Absolutely, because she could have prevented it, and if you could prevent something like that from happening, I mean, in this state and nature of this crime, then absolutely she should have been guilty just as much as he was. But he was charged with first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors say he's the one who drove this tragedy from the start.
But Madison flipped the script. On May 1st, 2025, she pleaded guilty to manslaughter and child endangerment as part of a plea deal, facing 25 years. In exchange, she's set to testify against Roan in his trial, now scheduled for June 9th, 2025, after a delay to prepare for her testimony. Madison claims she was under duress, controlled by Rowan. Court filings back her story. Some see her testimony as a key to nailing Rowan. Others think she's just sidestepping what she owes Oakley.
It's a tough call, man. With Rowan's trial just weeks away, Madison's word could unravel what happened to Oakley or bury the truth deeper. We're all still waiting on the answers on that one.
Yeah. Do you want to hear a fun fact about Rowan Waters' mom, Brandy?
Sure.
We have been told that is allegedly Nick Fortenberry's ex-girlfriend.
Wow.
That's who he was with before he got with Brittany, I believe.
That's an interesting alleged
And they're all
fact.
hemmed up on the car lot rolling back odometer scam. You can my case them and look them up. They're all hemmed up.
That's a rabbit hole and a half.
Oh, it goes so deep.
That's a rabbit canyon. Holy shit.
But Oakley deserves justice, and we're writing this out until it's found for her.
This was actually supposed to be 69 South's
Very first episode.
That's right. Very first episode. And it was so emotional, and we were not ready to get the podcast started at that point in time. So I'm kind of glad we saved it till now, where we could see the justice start to unfold. I think there should be charges on more than just those two. I mean, you're kind of helping elude a crime if you know about it and you bullshit the cops in 2 interviews. That's just allegedly, and that's just what one person's saying, though.
Mm-hmm. Funny how, though, she ended up at the bus station with the phone, $200, and ended up in North Carolina.
Yeah, like I said, that was cheap.
Very.
Well, that's about wraps up our Oaklee Snow episode for this week. We thank you for being with us.
And we are locked in for Roan's trial and Madison's testimony, so stay with us for those updates. So we have big news for our 69 South podcast fans. We've got something special for you. We are thrilled to announce the launch of our 69 South podcast Patreon, and we want you to join our community of sleuths. We are kicking off with a $5 tier that unlocks awesome perks, and we've got higher tiers packed with even more goodies saved for later. We have early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes content, including how we research and craft each case, exclusive bonus episodes, and special shout-outs. Your support helps us keep unraveling mysteries and delivering the true crime stories you crave. Join us today and dive deeper into the chaos with 69 South. You can go to www.patreon.com/69 South. And we would like to thank you for being a part of our podcast. Now share this and spread the word.
Until then, have a good day, good evening, whatever.